This is John for Global Traveler. Today I have the pleasure of talking travel with Richard Newton, author, writer, and Global Traveler colleague. How are you, sir?
Hi, John. Good to see you.
Good to see you. You're across the pond, as they say.
That's right. I'm in Derbyshire,
How is the weather out
and
there
you
today?
can probably hear the wind in the background. It's really picked up.
Well, it's pretty calm here, but we didn't come here to talk about the weather. We came here to talk about your new book, Global Games. We will get to that.
Yeah.
Certainly get to that. First, if you can give us a little bit of your background.
Well, I was born in England, in Sunderland, and my father was a cultural diplomat. So when I was about 3 years old, we went to live in the Kingdom of Lesotho, and from there we went to Kenya, and then Botswana, and then South Korea, and then finally Malawi. So I grew up all over the place.
Well traveled.
And I suppose when you have a childhood like that, you've got the bug, and so the natural course after that was to become a travel writer.
When did you decide to become a travel writer?
Um, well, I wanted to be one. It's very difficult to get into, and then there was competition. The Daily Telegraph Cathay Pacific Young Travel Writer of the Year Award in 1992, which I entered, and fortunately I won.
Nice.
And the prize was three commissions from the Daily Telegraph in London. And so the three I chose, I went to Namibia, Alaska, and the Galapagos Islands. And after that, they kept commissioning me and I kept traveling.
Okay. So you've written this book, Global Games. It's about sports
Yeah.
across the world. What drew you to sports? I know you've written a lot of columns for Global Traveler about sports. What drew you to the sports around the world?
Well, I was born in Sunderland, as I said. And if you've seen the Netflix documentary, Sunderland Till I Die, the soccer team there, or football for us, is absolutely integral to the place. So everyone who is born in Sunderland is born into the football team and into sport. So you grow up with that. And then I became interested in other sports and I played tennis and I played golf and other sports like that.
Yeah.
And
Oh, good.
and so really it came from that. And when Global Traveller needed a columnist, I said, well, I'm interested in sport. And so it was 8 years doing that and 90 columns.
So your book is 281 pages, 90 sports. How did you find all the sports? Did you look at a country and see what sports they had? Did you find a sport and then where it was?
It's a lot of it was stuff that I'd done and stories I wanted to tell. So I did. So this is some of the sports are on the cover there. And so I did all sorts of things. I snorkeled and had a close encounter with a tiger shark off Indonesia. Um, I was also selected for the Botswana national tennis team. So that's one of the columns. And then I've added one column that didn't appear in Global Traveller, but because I live in a place called Ashbourne in Derbyshire, we have an annual event called Royal Shrovetide, which is one of the longest surviving examples of mass football. It's been going for hundreds of years, and the entire town becomes a playing field, and the goals are 3 miles apart, and everyone has one team or the other, uh, the upwards and the downwards, and the aim is to get the ball to your goal. So I wrote about that as well.
So of all the sports you covered, what would be the one that stands out to you as really you enjoyed it without expecting to enjoy it that much?
I think the one that I didn't expect to enjoy writing about um, is a sport called pétanque, which is a kind of bowls played in France. And I'd seen it on my holidays, and it's just the old men in the village, and they play this game of bowls. And I was on assignment for Global Traveller in Senegal, in Dakar. And I was sitting on the veranda of the hotel having breakfast, and there were all these people in sports tops, and it was the Pétanque World Championship. And I I became interested then, talked to them, and apparently in the final, the losing team had lost by the maximum score, which is
Oh,
13-0. And one of the traditions in Pétanque is if you lose 13-0, you have to kiss the bottom of a woman called Fanny. So really the piece wrote itself because the losing team were nowhere to be seen. So I just presumed they were off somewhere in Dakar looking for anyone called Fanny.
well, the funny thing is, I saw that in your note on social media when you were talking about the book. That was one of the questions I was going to ask you. So I will ask you the next one. You also mentioned squash and kissing.
Yes, yeah.
What could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, that goes back to my childhood in Kenya, and we used to every week go and play sports at the sports club. And there was one of the girls, and I think we were seven or eight. She asked if I'd like to kiss her, and so off we stalked. And we ended up at the squash court, and there was a game in progress, but from the viewing balcony, you couldn't be seen. And so, yeah, my first kiss was in a squash court in Kenya.
So did that give you an affinity for squash then? Did you like it, forever because of that?
Uh, I I was drawn to it, but when you actually play squash, it is one of the most strenuous games you can possibly play, and I wasn't really cut out for it.
What is your favorite sport?
Well, I'd say it's soccer, football, um, and with my local team being Sunderland, and in fact this weekend we have the big game. We're playing our close rivals Newcastle United, and it's been a long time since we played them. So yeah, everyone is geared up for that. But when Sunderland are playing, wherever I am in the world, I try to find some way of following the game. And in fact, there was one of the biggest games we ever played, which was a playoff final. And I was in Cuba, and I managed to get it on my radio. And I
Oh,
was traveling in Cuba in a car. And I actually had to lie down on the floor of the car because it was the only way I could get reception. So I was driving around Cuba or being driven, lying on the floor of the car, listening to a football match being played in London.
that's dedication. That's a fan. So of all the places you've been, obviously you've traveled the world for sports. What were some of the nicer cities or the most surprising cities, the cities you've enjoyed the most?
It's it's really hard to say. Yeah, that is a tough one. And also cities evolve as well, because one of the places that I absolutely hated when I first went there was Taiwan. And and yet I'm now fascinated by Taiwan and Taipei. And of course it's got all sorts of geopolitical significance as well. And so that is a place that I find fascinating that I didn't initially. Though I think because I had just come from Alaska and I came to England for about 2 days, and then I flew to Taiwan. So my body was not in the best place.
Understood completely. And were there any unusual sports venues, arenas?
Well, like I say, one of the most unusual is right here in Ashbourne. And it's played every February, Royal Shrovetide. And literally it's the streets. They can't go in the churchyard, but they go in the rivers in February in England. They go in the town pond and literally through the hedges. and that probably is the most unusual. Um, but there are also variations of games in Spain that are played in unusual venues. Some of them are played in, they have to recreate the town streets because the games began in the streets, some of their hand and ball games. And so some of the playing venues indoors are made to look like streets with balconies and doorways, and yet they're all false, but
Hmm.
just to recreate the feel of the place.
That's an interesting concept. So, of all the places you've been, you've been all over the world. How has covering these various sports, traveling all these places, how has that impacted you?
I I hopefully it's broadened my horizons and broadened my outlook, and that I'm very tolerant of different cultures and open to new things. So I hope that's one of the long-term benefits of it. Um, though most of my traveling was done probably in my 20s and 30s, which is the best time to do it. And for the past almost 14 years, I've been married to Haley, who used to run a safari company in Africa. So she she likes to travel as well. And so the way we travel has changed. That in my 20s and 30s, I would sometimes do 3 or 4 trips in a month, and it was really strenuous. Whereas now, when we go abroad, we'll do it for 3 months at a time.
Are there
And
any? Oh, go ahead.
yeah, and our main draw is actually wildlife, and so we'll go to Africa and go on safari for 3 months.
Wow.
Or the most recent trip was Southeast Asia, and we traveled all around there. And again, that was a full 3 months on the road.
Wow. Wow. Are there any spots on your bucket list for the future?
I think I've done more than 100 countries. The one place that I kept in reserve was Antarctica, but oddly, I'm not really planning to go there. I think it's such a difficult place, an expensive place to get to, and there are so many other places that I want to go back to and see again. And we've been talking about where next lately, and it's the big pull is to Africa, uh, and so we may go back to Africa, but we enjoyed Southeast Asia so much, and so we'd love to go to. We did so many of the countries. We'd like to go to say Vietnam and spend an extended time there, or to Malaysia, or one of the others.
Now, Global Games is not your first book. You had another book out, Taylor and Burton in Africa. Tell us a
That's
little
right.
bit, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, that's it, and it came about because when I was growing up in Botswana, they 5 years earlier had Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor. They got remarried in a game lodge in Chobe National Park. And when I was, I think, 13 or 14, we stopped there for lunch, and the staff had been there when Burton and Taylor had been there. And so I wrote a short story based on it because it had really lodged in my mind. And I really enjoyed the characters and bringing it all to life. And the more I looked into it, the more I thought I could put their story and their ups and downs and their marriage and their divorce and their remarriage and then their next divorce and put that against the backdrop of African history. And so the book is in 3 parts. The first was when they were filming The Comedians, which they filmed in Dahomey, even though it was set in Haiti in the Caribbean, but they couldn't go to Haiti, so they went to Dahomey in West Africa, which is now called Benin. And I don't think there've been many novels, if any, set in Dahomey. And so I thought I'd like to really roll up my sleeves and write about that place. And so the first third is set there, and then the next third is in South Africa and Botswana. And then the final part is when Richard Burton was making The Wild Geese in South Africa, which, if you haven't seen it, is a great film.
Yeah, absolutely. What is next for you?
Well, besides still writing for Global Traveller, so at the moment I'm writing a piece on Sydney based on travels that I've done there. Um, but I've got boxes and boxes full of cuttings and magazines and books that I've contributed to, and they're just sitting collecting dust. So having got my columns out and put them all together in the book, I'm now looking through a lot of my writings on wildlife in particular. And so I think the next book will be a nonfiction, just putting together all my travels in search of wildlife. And so I've got about 250 pages already just cobbled together. And there's potentially a lot more, but I want to really start whittling it down and editing it and making it all come together as a whole.
Well, when you get that out, we would love to have an update from you. Until
Uh,
then, tell everybody
yeah,
where they could find out information about you and your books.
well, you can probably find me if you search for my name on Google and Travel Writer. I do have a web page, but it's mainly just recording what books I've read. Um, and I'm on social media, but I moved away from X, and so I'm on Blue Sky under my name. Um, so yeah, that's about. And then Global Traveller, I have my author page there, and the um, book is on Amazon, and it's you can get it in paperback or ebook, and it's on Kindle Unlimited, so people can read it for free as well. Uh, and I get paid per page they read. So the more they enjoy it, the better it is for me.
Well, I'm sure they'll enjoy it. I'm a big sports fan, so when I started at Global Traveler and I saw you started writing your pieces, I of course went right to them and I enjoyed all of them. And the thing that I like about it and the thing that I like about your book is that it's not that sports intensive where just a fanatic will like it. I think everybody will learn a lot and enjoy the book for what it brings. And I encourage everyone to check it out. It's Global Games. It's by Richard Newton. You can find it on Amazon. You can check out his columns on Global Traveler USA. Richard, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I look forward to reading your book. I have ordered it. And have a good day and safe travels.
Well, thanks, John. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.